the engine doesn't start. If the engine doesn't start anymore, this can be due to the following reasons. The engine could be running too rich. Turn the high RPM carburetor needle until it stops. Remember the RPM reading. Then let the engine run a few seconds until the excess fuel has burnt. Then cut the engine by pressing its stop switch. Now, by turning the same carburetor needle, you need to bring the RPM back up to the number you brought it to before. When in doubt, restore the factory settings. Carefully turn the carburetor needle all the way in. After that, the low RPM carburetor needle must be turned to 1 1/4 RPM, and the high RPM carburetor needle must be turned to 1 1/2 RPM. The spark plug could be defective or soiled. Pull off the spark plug connector. Screw out the spark plug with a spark plug wrench. Now, insert the spark plug into the spark plug connector and hold it with pliers to one of the engine screws. If no ignition sparks are visible when you use the rope starter, you need to clean the plug or replace it. If the idle speed shifts during the warm-up period, you need to readjust it. Turning the idle adjustment screw clockwise raises the idle speed. Turning it counterclockwise lowers it. You have found the ideal setting when the RPM is low and constant and the engine doesn't stall on braking. The carburetor needles on Carson petrol engines are preset at the factory. This means that there is generally no need for readjustment. However, depending on the air filter, muffler, and location, some correction may be needed. The carburetor has 2 adjustment screws. One is for adjusting low RPM and the other for high RPM. These are marked L for low and H for high RPM. First, adjust the high RPM carburetor needle. Run the engine for 2 minutes until it reaches operating temperature. Turn the high RPM carburetor needle clockwise 1/12 of a turn. This creates a leaner fuel-air mixture and increases speed and performance. You can repeat the process again until the performance improves further. Once the performance stops improving, the engine is running too lean and is no longer getting enough lubrication. Then you have to move the carburetor needle back 1/12 of a turn counterclockwise. Now the high RPM carburetor needle is optimally adjusted. Always make sure that the setting isn't too lean. Now it's time to set the low RPM carburetor needle. For this, the engine must also be at operating temperature. This is important. Turn the carburetor needle, now for low RPM, 1/12 of a turn clockwise. This creates a leaner fuel-air mixture and should improve acceleration. You can repeat the process again if the performance improves further. Once a performance stops improving or gets worse, the engine is running too lean and is no longer getting enough lubrication. Then you have to move the carburetor needle back 1/12 of a turn counterclockwise to make the mixture richer. Then the acceleration should improve again. The high RPM carburetor needle is optimally adjusted if your vehicle accelerates fast and clean. Always make sure that the engine isn't adjusted too lean. Running the engine richer is always better than running it too lean. If you're not sure, or you don't like the results, go back to the engine's default settings. Carefully turn the carburetor needle all the way in. After that, the low RPM carburetor needle must be turned to 1 1/4 RPM, and the high RPM carburetor needle must be turned to 1 1/2 RPM. Now you can step on the gas. Safety always comes first. Make sure you never injure yourself or anyone else. Soon, you'll get used to your model's handling. With proper care and maintenance, you should enjoy your model for a long time.